Call the regular meeting of the Tassville Board of Zoning Appeals to order. Today is January 8th, 2019. It is 6:30 p.m. Ask everyone to stand and join me at the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ask staff to call the roll, please.
Mr. Ashcraft?
Here.
Mr. Howe?
Here.
Mr. McKittrick?
Here.
Mr. Platt?
Here.
Ms. Rodeback?
Here.
So I didn't think of this earlier. We set our, I would say this for the record, 2019 BZA schedule meetings will be held on the second Monday at 6:30, with the exception of this January meeting that was already scheduled for today. So we will start that with the February meeting will now be, I believe, February 11th. We have old business on the agenda. 4A, we have a conditional use application CU-18-005 with a comment that is requested to remain tabled. Has been tabled since the September 2018 meeting. Staff, is there any update on that, or do we just need to leave that tabled and move on?
No update.
Okay. Any questions from the board?
How long are applications allowed to be tabled?
Per code, there's no limit. So what we've done is left them on the agenda, so if the board were to decide it's been a year, we'd like to see something happen, we can surely contact the applicant, let them know the board has requested them to move forward their application, but there's no prescribed limit on how long it can be tabled.
Okay, and there's been no contact but from these individuals or?
They were in last month for a sign variance.
Okay.
So they put this was the storage units out on Broad just east of Summit. So they did come in and get a side variance last month, but the conditional use is for the expansion onto a lot directly south. And once that was tabled, we received nothing from them indicating when they plan to move forward. I think, if I recall, he had mentioned like March or May or something that they plan to move forward with this, so.
Sure, it's winter.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions on this agenda item? Okay, then we'll leave that tabled. I don't believe we need a motion to do so. So we will move on to 4B on the agenda. This is variance application BA-18-020. It was tabled at the December 11, 2018 meeting. Let's see that Mr. Mosier is with us this evening. I believe we're going to be moving forward, so entertain a motion to remove this from the table.
So moved.
Have a motion, is there a second?
A second.
Is there a discussion on the motion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Rodeback?
Yes.
Mr. Platt?
Yes.
Mr. McKittrick?
Yes.
Mr. Ashcraft?
Yes.
Mr. Howe?
Yes.
Okay, this application is now before us. This is the applicant's Faith Seed Investments. Ask staff to give us an update, and then we'll ask Mr. Mosier to come forward. Go ahead, staff.
Thank you, Mr. Platt.
Thank
Like you said, this is for 21 Benton Street, 0.13 acres, zone R7 Village Single Family Residential. The applicant is requesting a variance from section 1221.05B1 of the Patasko Code to allow for an accessory building permit to be issued for a shed that he has built that would exceed the maximum permitted size. Here we can see an area map. Benton Street to the north. We have Church to the north, Main to the west, and Jefferson east. Just a quick review, the summary. A lot of these slides are carried over from the last hearing, so we won't spend too much time on them, but they are here for reference in case we need them. 0.13 acres in size. There's currently a home on the parcel and an existing 675 square foot garage. So the proposal is the applicant has already constructed a 10 by 14 shed. The applicant was cited for failure to obtain a accessory building permit when the zoning inspector inspected the fence. Proposal section 12.105B1, max permitted size is 396 square feet. The existing garage is 675 square feet, and with the addition of the 140 square feet of the shed, he's currently at 815. This exceeds the maximum permitted size by 419 square feet, or by 49%. The shed itself is set back 0 feet from the south property line. In the narrative, the applicant stated that the shed is a roof that's built on top of the fence, and the purpose was for providing shelter for his dogs. So in our review, planning and zoning identified a need for a side yard setback variance. Section 122105E1 requires that accessory buildings be set back 5 feet from any property lines. The shed itself is approximately 0 feet from the property line, and a variance for the full 5 feet would be needed. So the board may choose to grant this variance along with the requested variance, and we have included a condition with that. Quick review. So staff visited the property and photographed the accessory building that was construction. You'll see that in the upcoming slides. Staff personally witnessed at least 5 dogs. You'll remember 1203.03 of the definitions section lists kennel private as any lot or premises on which 5 or more domesticated dogs or cats more than 4 months of age are housed, groomed, bred, boarded, trained, or sold. And kennels are a prohibited use within the R7 zoning district. You look up here, we see of the existing conditions. We did have a little inset map here showing what angle these photos were taken from. So, the Lincoln County Building Code Department does require a building permit in addition to a zoning permit for any new structure or addition that is attached to an existing structure. The applicant did not state whether or not the constructed shed is attached to the existing garage. However, from the photos that were taken, it appears to be. As of November 13th, 2018, the Lincoln County Building Code Department has received no building permit applications for this address. The zoning inspector noted some things that he found online in regards to puppies for sale. Also noted that 10 citations from the Lincoln County Dog Warden for failure to register dogs. 1 citation from the Pataska Police for dogs at large, and several complaints by residents for loose dogs and dogs used in the bathroom on neighbors' property. There's several previous and current code violations. October 8th, 2018, the zoning inspector observed at least 2 loose dogs in the enclosure, and his full comments are included there in your staff report. So following December 11th, 2018 hearing, the zoning inspector provided some additional comments. Taken from the recording at 16:33, Mr. Moser, D is an actual zoning permit from the city of Pataskala, in quotes. This was a copy of the permit placard for display at the property once the permit is approved. The permit cannot be approved until a variance is granted and the placard is signed and dated. So in that instance, this permit has not been approved yet. From the recording at 18:04, Mr. Moser explained the shed was for his dogs. There was some kind of allegation that he is running some kind of stable here, and he does not have the dogs that had, and he does have dogs that had babies and had to get rid of those babies. Yes, there is a kind of discussion within the Newark Municipal Court as we speak. It has to do with his alleged failure to register 9 dogs, 5 under 8 weeks at the time of citation. So the accessory building for which the variance was requested was built sometime before January 19th, 2018. In 2018, we received over 10 complaints regarding the applicant's dogs running loose beginning March 2018 and as recent as December 2018, after the accessory building was constructed. The zoning inspector has personally seen the applicant's dogs loose on 4 separate occasions in 2018. 2017, the applicant was cited by the dog warden 10 times on 3 separate dates for failure to register dogs, 3 separate dates for loose dogs, and once by the Pataska Police Department for the loose dogs. In 2018, the applicant was again cited by the dog warden for 9 violations for failure to register the dogs. In total, the applicant has received 4 violations for loose dogs and 19 citations for failure to register dogs. Humane Officer, Paula Evans, in her October 3rd, 2018 report stated she witnessed 4 adult dogs, 2 adult males, 11 months old, and 5 puppies approximately 12 to 14 weeks old. The applicant advertised 5 puppies, 11 weeks old, around April 9th, 2018 online under Danes R Farms with his phone number listed in the contact. Mr. Moser stated that the applicant had to get rid of the puppies. Prices for those puppies online range from $1,000 to $2,500 each. These are not the same 5 dogs that were under 8 weeks at the time of citation on October 2nd, 2018. It's clear that the dogs had an additional litter of puppies. Again, section 120303 lists the definition of private kennel, any lot or premises on which 5 or more domesticated dogs or cats of more than 4 months of age are housed, bred, boarded, trained, or sold. So by definition, Mr. Collins is operating a kennel as 6 dogs are being housed on that property in addition to being offered for sale. In 1918, the recording, Mr. Moser stated it's not attached to anything, it's not attached to the garage. Mr. Collins has taken Steve Blake over there several times to demonstrate to this end. Mr. Blake responded to that saying that when he inspected the fence on February 28, 2018, he observed that accessory building that was attached to the garage at the time. He informed the applicant that it would require a permit from the Taxable Zoning Department and the Licking County Building Department, and this was the only inspection done, and the applicant has never taken or invited me to demonstrate anything to me in regards to the accessory building. And Mr. Blake is here tonight in case the board has questions for him. Comments from the Licking County Humane Society on October 2nd, 2018. A summary of their visit was sent to staff, and that full summary is attached, included in your staff report. 11 dogs, 4 adults, 2 young adults, and 5 puppies. 1 other dog in the house, which they did not observe. The humane agents had concerns over 2 of the dogs having a condition known as cherry eye, and had concerns over unsanitary and hazardous conditions for the dogs. They notified the applicant and he must address the cherry eye on the 2 affected dogs, clean up the fencing area, and then he will be put on a recheck list to verify items have been corrected. We did receive some comments from the Licking County Dog Warden. As part of that October 2nd, 2018 visit, the applicant was given 9 citations for failure to register dogs. And on December 3rd, 2018, we followed up with the dog warden, and the applicant had not obtained any licenses for any of the 9 dogs at that time. Police department also provided some comments pertaining to issues with dogs. There was 2 incidents of dogs at large in 2016, 4 incidents of dogs at large in 2017, and 3 incidents of dogs at large so far in 2018. Characteristics of the surrounding properties are all zoned R7 Village Single Family Residential. To the north is the church, and to the east, south, and west are all single family homes. There are your findings of fact there, which are also given in the staff report. As part of this, we came up with some supplementary conditions that the board may consider. The first one being the applicant shall obtain all necessary permits from the City of Pataskala and the Licking County Building Department within 3 months of the date of variance approval. 2, the accessory building shall not be used for commercial activity pursuant to 1221.056 to include kennels both private and commercial. And 3, the applicant shall receive a variance for side yard setback pursuant to 1221.05E1. If you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer.
Thank you. Jack, are there any questions from the board or staff?
No.
No.
Okay, Mr. Mosier, I see you're here this evening, and I do have a speaker request for him. Welcome.
Thank you.
If you could turn to staff, raise your hand, and be sworn in, please.
You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
And your name and address for the record, sir.
Jack Moser, 109 West Johnstown Road, Deanna. I've got several offices. I was trying to remember which one I'm running out of here, and that's 43220.
Thank you,
I'm here
sir.
on behalf of Faith Seed Investments and Paul Collins. If I could have this gentleman back up to the last slide.
Sure.
These 3 recommendations or supplementary conditions. First, I want to see if Mr. Collins and Faith Seed Investments appreciates the board taking their time to review all of this. I need to straighten several things out. One is, it was not Exhibit D that we had discussed. It was Exhibit C, E, F, and I from last time. Exhibit D we did not enter. That was notes that had nothing to do with what we were entering. I just want to make sure the record's clear with that. Secondly, the the city wants to call it a shed. This is not really a shed, it was a fence that then had some kind of structure put over top of it. Again, it is not attached to the garage, has never been attached to the garage or the house. Mr. Collins didn't even realize that he needed this, because he was going under the county code that said anything that was under 200 square feet did not require any kind of permit until Steve showed up over there and started, coming over there every day for various reasons. This is 140 square feet. The existing garage that's already on that 5-foot setback, that garage sits all, tops all the way up to the property line. The existing garage is 675 feet, and I believe the city has said that a total of 419 feet is already, over the limit anyways. So this is only adding another 140 to what's already granted a variance, well, I guess would have been grandfathered in before the code was put in, because that garage is fairly old. I also want to point out that there was some discussion about building permits. This is the first time out of any of this that we're hearing anything about a building permit. First, we had to get this variance permit because, in Facey Investments' eyes, this is not even a building, it's just a fence with a top over it. And it wasn't until these issues with Steve Blake back there that came up, there's multiple visits by Mr. Blake to this property. It has absolutely nothing to do with the zoning board. We're addressing those down in Newark, and we'll see where it goes. But in any event, we want to point out that this building permit, this is the first time we're even hearing that that is something that the city is going to require anyways. So they are facing in what?
We do have a building permit. They cashed a check, $56.
Well, there's two applications. I believe that's what we gave you. Exhibit C was an accessory building oh yeah, you're right. They did pay for the building permit. That was Exhibit C that we entered the last time we were here in December. And then the Exhibit E was a zoning permit that has not been granted yet. That's why we're here. So, they took the money from the building permit as far as whatever is going on with what's required under the building permit process. Mr. Paul Collins has done what he can, Phase Seed has done what they could. So they're asking to grant the variance. Before we say that, I do want to back up a minute here and discuss this idea that he's running some kind of commercial kennel here. He does have dogs, and those dogs have run at large. He understands that they cannot run at large. And these dogs have babies, puppies, however you want to call it. You want to harp on the fact that I use babies instead of puppies, that's fine. Puppies are what they are. The dogs have puppies, and then Mr. Collins has to do something with them, just like any other person. It's not like he's, keeping these dogs there at all times, and if he was selling them, he's been advised that that is something he cannot do, because this is inside city limits. So, in any event, he is requesting that you guys grant the variance. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from Mr. Mosier at this time? No. Okay, we have a second, speaker request form for the same application submitted by Mark Marsluff. Would you like to come forward? You'd turn to staff, raise your right hand, and be sworn in.
You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Mark Marslow. I live at 488 South Main Street.
That's here in the city, correct?
Yeah.
Pascal?
Actually, the first slide shows my house.
Okay. Do you have evidence or testimony applicable to this application, sir?
I was here last month. There to the bottom left of the yellow. Correct. That's my property there. I was here last month, and I heard at least one or two of the other neighbors speak. Part of what I came to do tonight was to actually stand up for Paul a little bit. I felt like last month his property's been kind of put in a fishbowl for everybody to look at. I know from personal conversations with Paul, he comes from North Carolina. I lived in North Carolina for 5 years. I know things are a little different back there. They're not always as what we would consider kept up or clean. Not that that's any kind of excuse, but if he's just recently here for 4 years,
Less than 3.
less than 3, there may be some adjustment yet that he's getting through. I can tell you that from being that close to him, my constant, pulling in and out every day, there has been improvements for sure. Now, do we all see improvements the same way? Not necessarily. Somebody that's OCD living down the street may drive by and think it's nothing but junk laying around. I do a little bit of reclamation stuff myself. I know what it means to go find something that you can get for free and turn it into something nicer. I've seen him do some of that stuff. So I just want to kind of clear that up. I kind of felt bad for him last month. It seemed like the whole neighborhood had come out to kind of kick him while he was down. Like I said, there has been quite a bit of progress that I've seen happen. On the flip side, there has been, and I've talked to Paul. We've had our discussions. We've had our throwdowns too, with some hard conversations about the dogs being loose. The property to the south of him, which would be to the east of me, is owned by a separate person. I maintain that a lot for him. He knows that. I keep in contact with him. If there's problems on the lot, his garage right now has a little bit of an eave issue, and I've contacted him to let him know that's falling apart, so in case he wants to button that up before winter. So my biggest issue became when I go out to mow that lawn, and I'm hitting landmines, and with the Great Danes, the blade hits, so you know what's fresh and what's been there. I've had conversations with Paul. He has always apologized about it being there, and always has a promise to make sure it gets taken care of. Doesn't always happen on a timely matter, but it happens. It happens, as I would say, in a North Carolina minute. It gets there. So anyway, yeah. But tonight I guess I get kind of confused as to what all we're here for. It's the accessory building on the back of the garage, building, shed with a roof, window, security light, door, whatever. Now we're into puppy selling and everything else. I guess I'm a little confused as to what all the decision is here tonight, or if the evidence or the information entered into the hearing here is about the puppies or the building, or what all we're here to try to decide. The building went up. I was surprised based on the size of the lot and what all's there. Space for the dogs, put up a privacy fence. To me, it was an improvement in the right direction. The dogs would be contained. They've got a place to stay out of the weather. Have they been contained? For the most part, yeah. A lot better than they were when he first moved in. But anyway, I wanted to come tonight and just kind of put some of that out there. Like I said, Paul and I have had our conversations. We'll leave those where they are. Some are good, some are bad, but I think we're all moving in the right direction. And I just hope that tonight we can finally make a decision on this, and the rest of us can move forward. That's all I've got.
Does the board have any questions for Mr. Marslow?
No.
Staff,
That's our
questions? Mr. Mosier, would you have any questions for the person presenting the testimony?
Yeah, I have one question.
Okay.
Mr. Marlowe, is it Marslow?
Marslow?
Marslow.
Mm-hmm.
Do you object to him building or having that there for his dog?
Is it an objection to the building per se? No. I think the question more along that I would be concerned about is a precedent that may be set in the allowance of building beyond the already set parameters for the lots. It's not, if it's one, do you say, well, it's just one? Or in 3 years, are there 5 or 6 more neighbors wanting to build, more buildings than green space on their properties? No, I don't. I've watched, houses get turned around and sold some of these old properties. The houses are being fixed up and everything's starting to turn around. I'd hate to see, every 3rd or 4th house now have more buildings on it than grass. The lots are small enough as they are right now. So do I particularly have a problem with his building itself? No. You know, it's stained, it's got a roof, it's been insulated, it has a window, and security lights and stuff. It's not, I'd say it's way better than a fence with a roof on it, you know. But, like I said, I wouldn't wanna see everybody in the neighborhood be allowed to do it just because one person was.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions for, thank you, Mr. Marsland?
Yep.
Okay, is there anybody else here that wishes to offer testimony? Sir, I see a hand raised. I do not have a speaker request form for you. Please come forward. You're welcome to provide evidence or testimony. Ask that you turn to staff, be sworn in, then you'll be asked to give your name and address for the record.
You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. My name's Don Lewis. I'm here on behalf of Tasco United Methodist Church.
Okay.
I guess part of it is we were never real sure exactly what was being discussed here, because, you know, but, and I got thrown in at the last minute, so somebody needs to be here. A couple of things that, you know, as far as the structure goes, I realize, you know, if the gentleman's from an area where that is an acceptable structure, that's fine. This is not that area that he was thinking about. From what I can see from the church, it looks like somebody cobbled up something just to have a little extra roof space. I realize it's not very big. But like the gentleman said, you allow one, next month somebody's gonna build one, so well, you allowed him to do it, why can't I do it? As far as the dogs are concerned, from my understanding, I was told by the pastor that there were several people at our 11 o'clock Christmas Eve service who were chased into the church by the dogs. It's becoming a problem for the church and our parishioners. Now, whether they were his dogs or not, I can't tell you. They probably couldn't tell you either. I do know that our secretary refuses to go get the mail because she's afraid of the Great Danes. And I know that the pastor said that she was out getting the mail one day and got a cold nose up her skirt. I think that's unacceptable. I've had dogs for many years. They were on a line so they couldn't run into the neighbor's property. I think what needs to be done is, on the dogs at least, is something more than what he is doing. I really don't like the appearance of the shed, and that's what I was asked to come tell you.
I have a question.
Good.
Do you feel that the essential characteristics of your neighborhood have been altered by this shed? Is it out of character for that neighborhood?
I guess my viewpoint on it is I don't think it has helped the appearance of the neighborhood. This is supposed to be a historic district that is supposed to be trying to make it look more presentable to people. And I do not feel that shed helps that cause.
Okay, and as far as detrimental to the public welfare, how do you feel like the overall situation, having more than, what was the maximum number of dogs for that property?
5.
More than 5 dogs on that property, do you feel like it's detrimental to the public welfare?
I guess on that aspect, my thought would be if they were well contained.
In our situation right now,
Then
not just current day situation, do you feel like it's a detriment to the welfare of the people in the neighborhood? or to your congregation?
Currently, I would say yes.
Anything else? Does anybody else have any, questions for Mr. Lewis?
No.
Okay, if you could go ahead and take a seat, sir, and we'll follow up with questions.
Okay.
Mr.
I do
Mosier.
have a question for
Please
Mr.
feel free.
Lewis.
Go ahead, sir, if you'll take a seat.
Okay.
Mr. Mosier will present his questions. I'll have you come back up and answer them.
I would like to know, Mr. Lewis, you're saying you're here on behalf of Pataska United Methodist Church. Do you live in the neighborhood?
I live on McIntosh Road.
And where is McIntosh Road?
It is just north of here.
North of where?
It's within the city limits. It's not in the old city village, which is where the applicant.
Do you live near Benton Street?
No,
And you,
but I am there quite often.
okay, what do you do over there?
I'm
on
let me,
trustee.
hang on, let me
Okay.
press pause. The questions need to come to the board will ask the
Okay.
questions of the
Okay.
witness. So you wanna know his address? Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. The problem is you're not back there by the microphone. But your question's such as you can present them to the board and we can
Why don't we have Mr. Moser ask all the questions and then we can bring them up
Okay.
and answer the questions.
Go ahead, Mr. Mosier. You ask of address. What do your other questions are for the witness?
Well, I guess the next question would be, how could he make any kind of determination about the characteristics of the neighborhood if he doesn't live in the neighborhood?
Okay?
Then my next question would be the detriment to the public welfare of that neighborhood if he doesn't live in that neighborhood. How is he qualified to answer those questions?
Okay?
Thank you.
Okay. Staff, do you have any other questions
No, sir.
for Mr. Lewis? Mr. Lewis, if you'd come up, wait a minute. Do you have questions for the testimony that was presented?
No questions for that testimony.
Please hold. Sir, come to the podium. You heard the questions presented to this board by Mr. Mosier. First of all, your address. You said you're located
My
on,
personal address
Yes.
is 10810 McIntosh Road.
and for the record, McIntosh is located in Old Lima Township, not within the old village limits of Pataskla, which is where this applicant resides, but it is currently in the city of Pataskla. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then the question as to how you can determine the characteristics of the neighborhood. Would you like to speak to that?
Yes, I will. I stated earlier, I am here on behalf of the Pataskla United Methodist Church. I am on the Board of Trustees, that board is responsible for the maintenance, upkeep, and such of the church itself. The church is an immediate neighbor of this property.
Okay, and Mr. Mosier asked how you're able to determine detriment to the neighborhood. What qualifies you to determine that? I think I've captured that correctly.
The complaints from all the parishioners that we have talked to.
Okay? Anybody else have anything for Mr. Lewis?
No.
Please
No.
have a seat. Thank you, sir. Mr. Mosier, any other questions?
If the board would allow, Mr. Collins would like to say something on his own behalf. I mean, I've been here trying to talk for him, but after everything that's come out today, he feels like he wants to say something.
Absolutely.
How you guys doing?
Good. You can,
You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth so help you God?
Yes, sir.
okay, and your name and address for the record.
Paul Collins Jr., 21 Benton Street, Pataskla, Ohio.
Okay, you have additional evidence and testimony to provide to the board.
I believe I know the yellow brick road better than anybody.
Okay, go ahead.
I probably can tell the story better than anyone. You know, I don't, as I sit here and I listen, I know we talking about dog care, a variance permit. Are we talking about what the neighbors do and don't like? You know, the only living neighbor that I've had since I've been here is Mark. The two houses on the right were vacant. The house on the left, vacant. So this is the only actual neighbor that I have. And he has no problem with the building. Now, could you pull a picture back from the side view. And when I put on there, oh, right there, that's great. Am I allowed to walk over here?
Sure.
This is, if you look right there, there's a pressure treated post. That's the fence. That's a little false roof there. There are now lights hanging to the left and right of the window. Those are old shingles, the cedar shake shingles. So I've heard testimony that it's shaggy. If you notice the insulation at the bottom, because there's a gap between the post and the garage. So the only connection to that building is the insulation. Because, and it's, you know, speaking to my wife last night, it's like, if we'd have gone down to Tractor Supply and bought I don't know, maybe a 5x6 doghouse, would that be a problem? You know, I don't know. I built a 10x14. Am I being penalized for my doghouse because it's big, because it's heated and aired, because we have lights on the outside? The reason we stopped finishing it is my attorney said, don't do any more to it, you might have to tear it down. And I'm like, well, all I did was enclose, put a roof on the fence. Now, I've heard people say it looks worse than it did before we got there to the property. But my wife had a 74 Super Beetle Volkswagen that I could put inside the house from the back, through the roof, because there was a big hole in it. It's gone. Because we replywooded it, we shingled it, and I spent about $40,000 on the inside. I have took Mr. Blake through my house. I've taken Mark through my house. I've taken my attorney through the house. It's restored to be like 1800s on the inside. Now we're moving to the outside. We're going to replace the windows, new vinyl siding, the yard to be irrigated, sod. You know, because where we do come from was a 25-acre estate, 6,000 square foot house. So we want to make this the best we can, but I've only been there 2 years. And my first meeting with Steve Blake was 2 years ago, down a little bit further where I rented a shop. And that's where all these summons started. See, the relationship's not just here. I've had 78 violations from this zoning committee in less than 2 years. That started where I rented a commercial building, and even then, you can't do this, you can't do that. Even though the neighbor next door was doing the same thing. I've gotten tickets for doing the exact same thing as my neighbors, not knowing I was wrong. But I have 78 different violations. That's a lot. You know, I sit at bed and I say, well, I've never had a zoning violation anywhere I've ever lived. I have lived in the city before. But I'm like, how do I get 78 violations, but I don't have any felonies. I've never been arrested, except for an overnight thing about dogs. I should have a police record that should match that personality, right? If I'm so bad, that should tell my life, but it doesn't. The only time the police ever been in my house is for dogs. Now, I can demonstrate for you, these dogs walk into Lowe's, Home Depot, Menards, with no leash. I can call a gentleman right now and bring them down here. Show you how they mind. They listen. These dogs are harmless. You don't have a record of them biting anybody? I've never spoken to this man in my life. And when he says that he's on behalf of the trustees, well, how many are there? How many voted yes? How many voted no? I don't know. I've never had a complaint from a secretary with my dog's nose up her skirt. No one came to me. You know, I'm not here to not do what you want me to do. I really aren't. But I just feel like, you know, it's not just about this lean-to. They said I didn't have a building permit. Well, I did. They just denied it. I had to pay $350 to come here to see you guys. You know, if we're not in compliance, we'll get in compliance. Can you go back to the property line thing? Since I met you guys last, have I not came to your office and said, could I put a fence from the porch that has a nasty roof, which we have reglazed, so I could fence in the rest of the property to confine my dogs. Did I not do that?
You did.
So I am trying to get in compliance, not only with the building, with the dogs, right? Now, the only problem I had is he said that I had to come like 4 feet past the garage. But that means like 20 feet of my yard what I would lose, you know? I don't think anybody here knows how many dogs I have, right? Some of these dogs were puppies, you know? If you look at the prior history, we don't run a dog kennel. You know, we have a female and we have a male. And well, 2 times they have come together. And it's hard to keep Great Danes apart. But I don't know if I'm here to defend myself on puppy care, neighbors not being happy. You know, a gentleman named Randy owns those 2 houses. I went over, introduced myself. He bought the house, he owned the other house. I took him to my house because I don't know my neighbors. I don't have any. That's all I want to have. And I said, anything that I've done or have done that I'm not doing is you don't like to talk about it, right? When he's confronting me about the dog poop, I said, we'll clean it up. You know, whether it's North Carolina time or past time, you know, we're trying to do what the city wants. You know, we got court tomorrow. You know, we have court next week. I'm just telling you, these violations. When I had the commercial building, no, you can't do this. You can't put the freezer inside. They sent the fire department there, the electrical. These folks have not worked with me at all from day one. Look it up. How does a guy get 78 tickets in less than 2 years? From one building to the next. But when you pull his record, I'm not a bad guy. You know, I would like, you know, but here again, the question for me was, how do you discriminate? Because I can afford to build a 10 by 14. And when I put that on the paper, we don't just use it for the dogs. Half of it's used for the dogs. They have separate kennels. And then the other side has a refrigerator, a laundry tub, you know. And then when you first walk into that, from the doghouse to the garage, is a man cave. You know, I've been married 31 years. A man needs a man cave, trust me, right? So it's done with all old stuff, and it just tied in. So I put dog kennel as, you know, just an answer. I didn't know it was going to come down to that's the only thing he's using it for. But like I said, these dogs have never bit anyone. They don't chase people that I'm aware of. I can bring in here right now all 3 of them, and they will sit. They will whatever I need. I walk through Lowe's. They walk right by my side. No leash. We go check out. They lay right on the floor. You know. I mean, there's a gentleman here that says he's representing the Methodist Church. They don't even know me. That church, I mean, I've been in church my whole life. No one's ever come over and introduced themselves to me at all. They've never even invited us to church, you know. But yet, they have me painted as, you know, profiled as he's a bad neighbor. He brought, it looks worse than it did. You know, really? Well, give me another 6 months, right? We'll probably match any house on the whole area, right? But we started on the inside first. You know, and Steve can tell you that. I mean, we put a lot of money in there. But I was able to save a lot of money because I do the work myself. So, you know, whether it's a 10 by 14 dog house or one you buy pre-made from Lowe's, how do you tell me that I can't have a 10 by 14 if another guy needed, you know, a little 4 by 5? You know, so I'll answer any of your questions. I answer any of his questions, but I am trying to work with you guys. I said I want to put a fence to just, you know, try to button it up as best I can. You know, it won't even let me put the fence where the old fence was. There was a little piece of old fence. You know, I can't even put it back out there. So, but are we here to talk about an additional fence or this building, this structure? You know, it's not living space. You know, it's getting counted towards the square footage. You know, is a shed in this city, if you have a shed, is it counted as square footage? Is that counted as square footage on the property? I'm going to ask a question. If a guy builds an 8 by 10 shed, is that counted as square footage?
I will note your question. When you're done, I'll have staff answer your question.
And for the record, this doesn't have a foundation. You know? It has 4x4 posts supporting the floor. You know? But they're the same posts at the fence. I mean, I promise you, I take it apart, and you're gonna like, okay, he did. The fence was here, he extended it, and then he put a roof on it. That's all I've done. I promise you. You know? I don't know what to say. Jack probably wants me to sit down and shut up, so.
Board have any questions for Mr. Collins?
No.
No.
Staff have any questions for Mr. Collins?
I do.
And could you address his question on the shed square footage calculation?
Yes, for an accessory building, and ultimately that's the reason we're here, is that we permitted a maximum amount of square footage for accessory building. The garage exceeds that and is grandfathered in.
Okay.
So the addition does count towards that overall square footage, which is why we had to do the variance application.
Okay.
In terms of working with us, as stated by the zoning inspector and in the staff report and in presentation, this was built sometime in January of 18. We're here in January of 19. It required a mayor's court. They determined you had to submit a permit, had to go to mayor's court for you to do that. It had to go to mayor's court for you to submit the variance application. So we've had a year of this shed, so insinuating that you're working with us, I find not to be characteristic of how things are actually playing out. And the other question would be, why do you think you get all these violations? If everything is fine, why do you think you get all the violations?
Well, I'm gonna address your first point because you're wrong. The fence was built. Okay, the shed was never put on until May of last year. You said January.
I don't think that's correct.
Well, I know it's correct because I built it. He came. I asked him to come out and do an inspection. Okay, in March or May of the fence. That when he came there, that's when the roof was put on. Okay. Now you cashed my check, right? 6 weeks later, I got no permit. Steve said, submit it as a structure. It shouldn't be a problem, but get the permit. 6 weeks after you cashed my check, nothing. I called down here. They put me on the phone to you, and you said you have to have a variance. Board, I raised my right hand a while ago. If I had not made that phone call, I still would not have known if I could or could not have a permit. Okay? The second thing that you said, I cannot today say, because we're in a legal battle, of why I feel that I've had the violations. Okay? So, I'm not going to go into that. But there is a reason. I would ask you, is there any one person else in this town that has had 78 violations in less than 2 years?
No, because the majority of folks are more than willing to follow the rules.
Oh, okay, so.
Okay. I guess I should have made clear earlier, dialogue between staff, the board, it all needs to go through the board. So if there's questions that need to be presented, they need to come to the board, we will ask for an answer.
So the other question would be...
You asked the question of the staff as to the shed count of square footage, you got your answer. Is that correct? Okay.
The other question would be, Mr. Collins has stated that the dogs are well behaved, but we do have a police report from February 24th of 17 where the officer indicated that he received a complaint from a neighbor said he was fearful of dogs that were out. When the officer got to the property, he said the dog started barking and growling at him. So my question would be, did that happen?
Okay. You
Can I
heard the
address
question.
that? Can I address that for honestly?
If you just answered that question, please.
I know nothing about what he just said.
Okay.
Now,
That's
2017.
the answer to the question.
Okay. Can I ask a question, sir?
You can answer a question to us.
Yes, sir. Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Okay. We did not, and I go back. My question is, you all, he just stated a situation of an action that could be a adult. My question to you is, what does that have to do with a variance permit first yet? And then my second question is, when he answered the question about the square footage structure, okay, you guys have considered this a dog house, a dog kennel. What is, if a person goes to Lowe's and they buy a 4x8 dog house and they bring it home, do they have to have a permit for that? So, if it's a structure, okay, but if it's a dog house, do they have to have a permit? And is that is a dog house counted against the square footage of what's already there? I already know I feel I know the answer. I doubt you have 20,000 permits for dog houses, large or small. So I feel like if this is being considered a dog house, why can't I have a 10x14 if a guy can have a 4x3?
Okay, you have any other questions? Okay.
I appreciate
Any
it.
other questions for Mr. Collins? No. Please be seated.
Thank you.
To follow up to Mr. Collins' question, I simply want to know, does a dog house in the city of Pataskala require a permit?
Based upon the definition in the code, it does count as an accessory structure.
How many permits have been issued?
We have the zoning inspector here. Are there any questions for him based on what he has presented from the board?
No.
Okay. Mr. Mosier, I just want one final follow-up with you, or I'm sorry, maybe you and staff. Staff was asked at the last meeting to provide Mr. Mosier with the recording from the November meeting. Was that done?
Yes.
Okay. So you have been provided everything that's been happening here?
Yes,
Okay.
and I would like to make one comment about that. I did listen to that recording, thank you
Okay.
very much for providing it. And based on what I listened to, it seemed the only concerns that anybody brought before this board was about the dogs. So I just, I wanted to reiterate that, thank you.
Okay. Okay, that is all the speaker request forms that I have. Is there anybody else here? Sir, do you have additional evidence or testimony?
Yes.
Please come to the mic. State your name again.
Mark Marslow.
Go ahead, Mr. Marsland.
Just a follow-up on something was asked earlier about if the dogs are potential detriment to the neighborhood. And to add on to what Paul said, his testimony about the dogs, I've met, I think, all of the dogs. They are all pretty well behaved. I've never had an issue with them, other than there was one incident. This was 2 years ago when the cattle fencing was still up. My girlfriend was over with her 3 daughters. At the time, would have been 11-year-old Annette had walked up towards the fence. She wanted to see the dogs. One of them did reach through and get a hold of her shirt to pull her towards the fence. It might have been playful banter, I don't know. But in as far as the neighborhood aspect of the detriment is concerned, if I can go up to the monitor here, there's something that I haven't heard brought up just yet. The neighbors here, their mailboxes are here. So anybody in any of these homes that's going to get their mail has to come over here at the east end of Paul's property. Most of the time when the dogs are out, they're out in this area, if they're not here. So, is that a detriment to the neighborhood? If you don't know the dogs and you've got 3 Great Danes coming at you that almost look you in the eye, I don't know. I'm not gonna necessarily stand around and wait to see if they bite or not. I don't know. I think a lot of it comes down to, is the fence the building containment for the dogs? They are well behaved. I know that a lot of times when we're out of the yard, Paul, all he has to do is snap his fingers and they come back. But if they're always out of the yard, we don't always know where they're at. I know that they have ventured into my backyard, my side yard, I guess it is, I don't really have a backyard. and into the property to the west of Paul. It's like, containment's containment if it's being utilized and it's containing the dogs. So far, it's not a reliable source.
Okay? Thank you, Mr. Marsloff. Are there any other, I guess, let me start here. Are there any other persons here that wish to speak, provide evidence or testimony on this application? Are there any other questions, comments, or concerns, either from staff, the board, Mr. Mosier, Mr. Collins, anybody else who has spoke? Does anybody else wish to speak?
I have a question for staff.
Okay, go ahead.
With regards to the payment by Mr. Collins, is that an application fee?
That is an application fee that we do cash at the time that it is submitted. It comes in with all the application and the supplementary materials. There is a fee associated with that. We process, get a number, the date it was submitted, get a receipt, put the check, so we can get it to finance. We have to do it every day or every other day, so that's why that happened. So there was no building permit, it was simply a zoning permit. They're two different.
Okay, how much was it that was Mr. Collins paid?
$50 for an accessory building zoning permit fee.
Okay. And if you pay that fee and the zoning permit is denied, is that fee refunded?
It is not.
Okay, it's
Code
a
re-
fee for the application
Correct.
itself.
Yeah, code requires that we have the fee prior to any action being taken on the permit itself.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Comments, concerns from anyone? All hearts and minds are clear. All right. Then I will go ahead and close the testimony portion for this application. The BZA has, per the code, a list of findings of fact that we must consider. Ms. Rodeback referenced some of them previously. The board will go through these. The board will have discussion and deliberation and whatever you want to call it, and then move or not move after that. I do not anticipate any other questions for staff. I think we've done this enough times so that our testimony portion and input is finished. So this will be findings of fact pursuant to 1211.07A1 of the Chappaqua Code, letters A through K. First of all, letter A. And this will be based on the application and evidence and testimony presented. I do want to make a statement before we go through these. You all are all aware, I know you're seasoned and do a great job. This, a lot of times we get a lot of testimony. The job of the BZA is to weed through that and figure out what applies to the application and what we are allowed to consider. So, that being said, I have the full confidence that this board will do that and only consider the facts, evidence, and testimony that we are allowed to and that apply to this application. Letter A, whether the property in question will yield a reasonable return or if there can be a beneficial use of the property.
No.
I have 3 no's. That would be 4, that would be the majority. Letter A will be a no. Letter B, whether there are unique physical circumstances or conditions that prohibit the property being developed in strict conformity with the zoning regulations such that a variance is necessary to enable the reasonable use of the property.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Majority of the board says yes. Letter C, whether the variance requested is substantial.
Yes.
Yes.
Letter D, whether the essential character of the neighborhood would be substantially altered or the adjoining properties would suffer a substantial detriment as a result of the variance.
Yes.
Yes.
Letter E, whether the variance, if granted, will substantially or permanently impair the appropriate use or development of adjacent property.
Yes.
Letter F, whether the variance, if granted, will be detrimental to the public welfare.
Yes.
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 Did I hear 3 yeses, is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you. Letter G, whether the variance, if granted, would adversely affect the delivery of government services.
No.
No.
Letter H, whether the property owner purchased the subject property with knowledge of the zoning restriction.
No.
No.
Letter I, whether the property owner's predicament can be obviated through some other method than a variance.
Yes.
Yes.
Letter J, whether the variance if granted will represent the minimum variance that will afford relief and represent the least modification possible of the requirement at issue.
No.
And
No.
No.
And letter K, whether the spirit and intent behind the zoning requirement would be observed and substantial justice done by granting the variance.
No.
No.
So staff, for review, we have no for letters A, G, H, J, and K. For the others, then we obviously have yes. So those are the findings of facts that this board goes through. As I stated a little bit ago, one of the most difficult things I think of serving on this board is trying to weed through and determine fact from opinion and things that apply and all that. I feel that we have received sufficient evidence to, at least that I have, to render a decision on this. I've certainly received all kinds of information on this and testimony. But again, I would encourage all of you to only consider those that are within the realm of our authority, as well as what the applicant is actually seeking, which is a variance from section 1221.05B1 of the code to allow for an accessory building that would exceed the permitted size. Along with that, if this board was to approve this application, then the motion to do so would need, or I would recommend that we would also approve a variance from section 1221.05E1, and that would be for the side yard setbacks. One final thing, after discussion with the legal counsel of the BZA at the last meeting, I posed the question to him. He recommends that all motions of the board, the motion itself is to the, I guess I would call it to the affirmative. The question presented to this board is approval of the application as submitted. So any motion then would mirror that. And an example, and this is to prevent confusion, an example of that would be if this board so chose to approve an application, you would simply make a motion to approve with or without the supplementary conditions we felt appropriate. There would be a second discussion, and a yes vote on that motion would then approve the application, and this is going to be our process moving forward. Likewise, if the board felt that the application should not be approved, you would still make a motion to approve it. I don't know why you would worry about supplementary conditions. If there was then a second to approve it and discussion, the vote of the board ultimately would determine whether or not it was approved. So if the majority voted no on the motion to approve, then the application requesting approval would then be denied. That being said, we have received all of our testimony, evidence, we've gone through our findings of fact. Staff has presented in their report a sample motion for our convenience. I certainly thank them for that. It makes it easier for this board to read a motion. A suggested or a sample motion, I guess, that we can modify as we wish. So that being said, is there a motion from the board as to this application?
I'll move to approve.
So can I have clarification? I guess the motion I'm seeking is a motion to approve a variance pursuant to section 122105B1 of the Pataskala Code. Is that your motion?
That's the motion.
Okay, so a motion has been made. Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's been a second. Is there discussion on the motion?
I do have a decision that I'll make on the vote, and it is based on the testimony and evidence with regards to the structure only, and not with regards to dogs or dog wardens or citations or anything else.
Likewise, I would add a comment for myself. The decision I render will be based on the application as submitted, the testimony and evidence provided that relates to the application and the structure that is the application is seeking approval thereof, and nothing else that really does not apply to this and this board does not have authority over. Are there any other, or is there any other discussion on the motion? Hearing none, we have a motion to approve and a second. No discussion, no further discussion. I ask for a roll call, please, from the staff.
Mr. McKittrick,
No.
Mr. Platt,
No.
Ms. Rodeback,
No.
Mr. Ashcraft,
No.
Mr. Howe.
No.
All right, so the vote has been 5-0 no to approve. Mr. Collins, Mr. Mosier, your application has been effectively denied. Staff will follow up with you in the next few days as to next steps. Certainly, Mr. Mosier's aware he can seek relief in the next 30 days through the courts under 2506 if you so wish. Other than that, this application is then concluded. This board will move on to the next item on the agenda. Those of you that were here for this application are free to stay. Those of you that wish to go, feel free to do so. These meetings are not that fun and exciting, so you won't hurt our feelings if you leave. All right, we will move on to number 5 on the agenda. This is new business. I see none on the agenda. Ask the staff if there's any new business.
No, and I don't know, because the deadline will be Friday. Well, yeah, Friday. Just trying to think logistically of like when deadlines and how stuff will shift, but I imagine we'll keep it still on the Friday following the board meeting. So at this time, I don't believe there are any applications on the horizon, so might get a Monday off.
Wow, that'd be a first. in a couple
That'd be
years.
all right too.
All right.
I can study for whatever tests they have. So move on to number 6, findings of fact. I'm seeking a motion to approve the findings of fact for application VA-18-020 as discussed in the hearing. Is there a motion?
So moved.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion on the motion. Roll call, please.
Mr. Ashcraft,
Yes.
Mr. Howe,
Yes.
Mr. Platt,
Yes.
Mr. McKittrick,
Yes.
Ms. Rodeback.
Yes.
Okay, the findings of fact have been approved. Number 7 on the agenda, this will be the approval of the minutes. This will be for the December 11, 2018 regular meeting minutes. They've been provided to you for review. Are there any changes, questions, comments on it for staff?
No.
Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the minutes of the December 11, 2018 meeting?
So moved.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, is there discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. McKittrick,
Yes.
Mr. Platt,
Yes.
Ms. Rodeback.
Yes.
Mr. Ashcraft,
Yes.
Mr. Howe.
Yes.
Okay, minutes have been approved. Number 8, is there any other business before this board? I will-
No, from a staff perspective, I did wanna follow up and say we will be getting a revised schedule out to everybody. I don't know if we'll have any second Mondays where we get a holiday, but if that happens, then it'll shift to the Tuesday, so there might be one if that happens this year, but other than that, we should be pretty good. I think we kind of looked through today to see if that would happen a lot, and it looked like maybe one if that, so we should be good, but we'll get the schedule out here hopefully by the end of the week where we have the deadlines and meeting dates, and it'll reflect the 6 o'clock time, and then we'll also get that online as well. 6:30, sorry.
Wishful thinking.
6:30 actually works better for me.
I would just say thank you to the board for being flexible and understanding. Certainly appreciate that, and as I told council last night, I enjoy serving on this board and serving the residents and serving with you all. The only other thing I would say is very quickly, like I said, I was at council last night. My second item that I brought before council, and I spoke on my own behalf. We're all aware of the, and I intentionally did not go into details, but we're all aware that there's been somewhat of a claim of racism and/or ethnic discrimination or something against the members of this board, and I did assure the city council that certainly is not an issue for me, and I would think that it was not for any member of this board, and that I did share my I guess, I don't know how I worded it, concern, dislike, displeasure. I think any claim like that is completely out of line. This board is professional and does a great job to uphold the city zoning code and serve the residents and the council. And I did share that it is personally offensive to me. As you all know, my wife and I have adopted 2 kids from People's Republic of China. They're our only children. So any claim that I am a person that discriminates based on ethnic origin is just outrageous, and I find it offensive, and I ask council to consider that in any, consider the support of this board, and really me, as speaking for myself, as they move forward, any decisions they make. That being said, I just wanted you all to be aware of that, and I didn't want to go into any other details of the source of that or anything. So, at any rate, if there's any other comments, business before this board. Entertain a motion to adjourn. This will be till the Monday, February 11, 2019 meeting at 6:30. Is there a motion?
I move.
Second.
Is there a second? We have a second. Roll call. I'm sorry, is there discussion on the motion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Flatt?
Yes.
Mr. Howe?
Yes.
Mr. Ashcraft?
Yes.
Ms. Rotoback?
Yes.
Mr. McKittrick?
Yes.
We're now adjourned. Thank you. We'll see you.